They said it was just a field trip, but Willowvale doesn't forget who it takes. The beginning. The bus that disappeared from Valewood Elementary in October of 1985 was supposed to be gone for one afternoon. It was a crisp Friday. Parents waved, teachers smiled, and 32 children filed onto the vehicle wearing their school colors. The driver, a soft-spoken man named Garrett Elms, closed the door at 8:07 a.m. The bus never reached its destination. It never arrived at the state park. It was never seen again. For years, it was a local mystery, then a state scandal, and finally a whispered memory. Authorities assumed the bus had veered off a back road and tumbled into some forgotten ravine, lost forever. Parents held vigils. Investigators quit in frustration. Some claimed the case was cursed. But in 2026, something surfaced. Quite literally. Present day. Officer Maeve Darden. Maeve Darden wasn't born when the children vanished, but she grew up in Valewood, hearing the stories. How the air changed near the old quarry, how birds didn't sing near Hollow Creek, and how you could still hear singing at night if you stood by the willow trees near the old bus lot. She didn't believe any of it. Not really. Until now. She stood at the edge of what used to be Willowvale training grounds, now a crumbling parking lot reclaimed by moss and silence. A construction crew had called in a report earlier that morning. They'd been prepping the land for demolition, clearing away the cracked pavement, when the backhoe struck something beneath the dirt. Something metal, something shaped like a bus. Maeve was the first to arrive. She brushed away the soil with her gloved hands, revealing the faded blue stripe of a school vehicle. The side mirrors were shattered, the glass was long gone. But the number stenciled on the side still remained, though time had tried to erase it. Bus number 27. She felt the air shift. Not the wind, not the temperature, just the air, like something was watching her, or remembering her. She took a step back and radioed it in. We found it. Inside the bus. The forensics team worked through the night. The interior was badly corroded, as if it had been trapped underground for decades, sealed off from oxygen, water, light. The bones of the driver were still in his seat, belted in, but not a single child's remains were found. Instead, tucked beneath the seats, in the cracks, and in the floorboards were items. A pink shoelace tied in a sailor's knot, a small notebook with stick figures and the words, "Don't forget me," a melted candy wrapper, half folded into the shape of a bird, a crayon drawing of a cabin with eyes. In the back row, under a rusted bench, was a Polaroid photo sealed in wax paper. It showed 5 children standing in a semicircle near a tree, backs to the camera, facing something out of frame. Maeve flipped it over. 4 names were scratched in pencil: Ella, Micah, Briar, Hope. The 5th was just... Maeve didn't know what she was holding, but deep inside, something in her blood told her this wasn't over. Not even close. Valewood Town Archive. 3 days later, Maeve found herself in the Municipal Records Building. Dust choked the air. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. She pored through every file on the Valewood disappearance. Statements from teachers, bus maintenance logs, parent interviews. She found one note scribbled in the margin of a case file. It was easy to miss. Written in different ink, nearly faded to nothing. Willowvale wasn't a camp. It was a corridor. The survivor. It wasn't long after that when Maeve received an anonymous tip. Just a voicemail, distorted and low. "You're looking in the wrong direction. Try the ledger in the attic of Crossbell Church. Look for the name Ira Noakes." She didn't forget. She remembers the whispering trees. Crossbell Church had been abandoned since the flood of '92. It had collapsed partially into the river, a bell tower cracked in half, its pews warped from rot and silence. Maeve went that night. In the attic, among broken hymnals and rat-chewed choir robes, she found the ledger. Inside was a list of donations, baptisms, and beneath a folded newspaper clipping was a name circled in red: Ira Noakes, age 42, survivor of a 1985 child services raid near the Willowvale training grounds. Maeve froze. She didn't know it yet, but Ira Noakes was one of them. She had never gone public, never spoke to reporters, never acknowledged the connection. But now she had reached out. Why now? Maeve found her 2 days later in a women's shelter near Briarton. She was quiet, reserved, but when Maeve showed her the Polaroid, Ira turned pale. That's not a photo anyone should have. Maeve sat forward. Is it you? No, but I remember when it was taken. Ira speaks. They never meant to let us go, Ira said that night. Her voice was gravel soft. Her hands trembled when she lit her cigarette. We were brought there for something. It wasn't education. It wasn't therapy. It was observation. Maeve listened in silence. They kept us underground, in rooms with no clocks. We only knew time passed when the lights dimmed. They gave us new names. I was Harmony. They told us our real names were wrong, that names attracted it? Maeve asked. Ira looked at her. They never said what it was, only that it fed on memory, that we had to forget in order to be safe. Maeve stared down at her notebook. Her pen trembled in her hand. How did you get out? Ira didn't speak for a long time. When the fire started, she whispered. Some ran, some hid, some stayed. I was the last one pulled out. They told me I was the only one who survived, but I knew they were lying, because I still hear them. Maeve's was dropped. Hear who? Ira looked at her. The ones they left behind. Before Maeve left, Ira handed her a folded piece of paper. Old, torn, smudged. Written on it in uneven, childlike handwriting were rows of names. Some were crossed out, others circled. One was written 3 times. Hope, hope, hope. Ira whispered as Maeve took it. She was the one who knew the way out. She was the one they feared. If you want to find the truth, follow the girl who remembered. Maeve looked down at the list again, and she remembered what was carved into the seat of Bus 27 when they first found it. 4 words, just deep enough to still be read. We are still here. The trail beyond the waterline twisted deeper than Lana remembered. Her boots broke through patches of frost beneath tangled roots, and the trees leaned close like they were listening, like they'd heard it all before and didn't want it said again. Beside her, Deputy Quinn walked in silence, his breath fogging in the air, flashlight in hand. He didn't ask questions anymore, not after the last sight. They'd both seen what silence could carve into a place. At the ridge, they paused. Lana knelt in the damp earth, comparing the notations scrawled in Cassia's journal with the trees around them. She ran her fingers across the trunk of one gnarled cedar, noting the deep hollow near its base. Quinn stepped forward, pulling back thick bramble with a gloved hand. Beneath it, concealed under generations of moss, was another hatch. No latch, no markings, just a faint indentation on the rusted iron. 3 parallel lines, like claw marks or tally strokes. It groaned when they opened it. The air that exhaled from the shaft wasn't just cold. It was dead, unmoved, preserved. Quinn took a step back. Lana climbed down alone. The ladder led to a sloped tunnel, reinforced by ancient concrete slabs, some of them cracked by time or pressure. Wires dangled above her head, long dead, their insulation curled like burned paper. When she reached the bottom, she found herself in a hallway. Low ceilings, narrow walls, a single track of faded rubber flooring leading inward. She moved carefully, her breath loud in the stillness. Each door she passed was labeled with a number, nothing else. But the further she walked, the more the symmetry broke. Door 9 was missing its handle. Door 11 was marked with soot. Door 13 had scratch marks, hundreds of them, around the frame. At door 15, she stopped. The journal had mentioned this one by number, not by name. 15 was for those who spoke in their sleep, Cassia had written. They said the dreams were dangerous. That memory was contagious if you let it bleed. Lana rested her hand on the door. Inside was a room no bigger than a closet. Bare floor, one drain, no furniture. The walls were papered with children's drawings, sunlight, trees, rivers, but each had been defaced, torn, scorched, scribbled through with black ink. In the center of the room was a small pile of ash. On top of it, a red marble. She knelt, reaching out, then froze. Footsteps. She turned, light sweeping the hallway, catching only dust. "Hello?" her voice echoed. Nothing. She rose, gripping the marble tight, and stepped back into the corridor. And there, faint, something echoed back. A whisper, a child's whisper. "Don't close the door." Lana spun around, but the corridor was empty. "Who's there?" she called. Another whisper, nearer this time, almost behind her ear. "Don't forget the names." The flashlight flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Lana backed out of the tunnel, her heart hammering. The marble burned cold in her palm. Back above ground, she didn't speak, just handed the marble to Quinn and whispered, "There's more under there than bones." That night, Lana returned to the station. She called in the archivist from state records, requested every intake form, juvenile transfer, and missing persons report from 1985 through 1995, and she pulled the original map again, the one with the hand-drawn routes, the symbols. This time, she noticed something she hadn't before, a note scribbled sideways in a corner, in Cassia's unmistakable hand. 3 went to the river. 2 went to the garden. 1 stayed in the mirror. Lana sat back. The river she had found. The garden? Maybe that was what Kimmy had described. But the mirror? She thought about the girl from the mural, arms open to the light. Was that where Cassia had gone last? She called Nora. When the phone picked up, Nora didn't say hello, just, "I saw something again." Lana's voice softened. "Where?" "In my sleep, but I think it's real." There was a room with white walls, a basin in the center, and mirrors that didn't reflect, only showed what they wanted. Lana closed her eyes. "What did you see in them?" Nora's breath caught. "Not me." The next morning, a package arrived at the sheriff's station. No return address. Inside, a photograph. A black and white image of 6 children seated in a circle, their eyes closed, hands held. In the background, a woman in a long coat stood near a large reflective wall, a mirror, but warped, almost fluid. Lana flipped the photo, one line written on the back. She called it the still room. Later that day, Lana drove to the town's old civic archive building, long since shuttered, most of its records moved or burned. But the basement still held microfilm reels and old facility maps. With the archivist's help, she found it. Morning Lake Behavioral Evaluation Center. Operational 1983 to 1990. Defunded, reclassified, quietly erased. The original blueprint revealed a hidden sublevel, one labeled simply, "Observation Deck, Restricted." That night, Lana drove back to where the center once stood. It was now a private residence, large, remote, heavily remodeled. But beneath it, the foundation was unchanged. She parked down the hill, walked in under the cover of dark, found a rusted bulkhead buried beneath ivy, forced it open. The air smelled the same, stale metal, old water, time. She descended. Below was a single corridor. At the end, a door. On it, a plaque, the still room. Inside, mirrors, yes, but none of them whole, all fractured, partially blacked out. They didn't show reflections. They showed memories. Lana approached one, heart pounding. The surface shimmered. Then, a flash. A girl, barefoot, standing by a bunk, her back turned. A voice overhead. "Repeat your name." Silence. Then, no name, no pain. Another flash. A boy, eyes hollow, being led through a hallway by 2 adults in white. A final flash. Cassia, her face close to the glass, whispering, "Don't look away. If you do, we disappear." The mirror went dark. Lana stood in silence, then turned. Behind her, in the reflection of one still surface, stood a figure. Not her. Not now. A child. Watching. The figure didn't move. Lana's breath hitched. Her own reflection was absent. Only the child remained, standing barefoot in a hospital gown too large, sleeves past the wrists, a single red thread dangling from the collar. She blinked, and the child was gone. In the mirror, only the cracked silver surface remained, still, lifeless. But behind it, she felt it. A soft thud echoed from deeper in the corridor, followed by another, steady, like someone walking barefoot down a long, forgotten hallway. She turned her light toward the sound, but there was no one. Then a whisper, not from the mirror this time, but from somewhere ahead, inside the walls. She told us if we remembered, we'd be punished. Lana pressed forward, her body tight, pulse quick. The corridor curved sharply to the left and opened into a narrow room with thick, reinforced glass on both sides. Observation panels, the kind used in facilities not for security, but for watching. Inside the viewing chamber were shelves filled with VHS tapes, labeled only with numbers. And on the table in the center, an old tape recorder, the same kind as the one Kimmy's message had been on. A cassette was already loaded. She pressed play. A soft click, then static. Then a voice, high, thin, frightened. They made us watch, said it was for our healing, but it wasn't. It was so they'd know who remembered too much. Then silence. Then, from far away on the tape, another child's voice, whispering, as if into someone's shoulder. Don't forget the garden. Don't forget the mirror. Don't forget your name. The tape ended. Lana sat there, the recorder still in her hand, her own reflection staring back at her from the dark glass in front. Only now, there was something different in her eyes. Not fear, not shock, recognition. Later that night, back at the station, she pored over the photographs again. The mural, the circle of desks, the scorched room with the marble. She noticed it this time. In the drawing from room 15, the child had drawn a circle around something tiny at the foot of a tree. A hatch. Beside it, a figure in black. Watching. She called Kimmy. Did they ever take you to a place with mirrors? Lana asked. Kimmy was quiet for a long time. I thought that was a dream, she said at last. A room where nothing showed right, where your face kept changing, like you were becoming someone else. Did Cassia ever go there? Yes, Kimmy whispered. They said she started remembering too much. They said the mirror could fix it. And did it? Lana asked. No, Kimmy said, her voice cracking. It made her remember everything. That night, Lana didn't sleep. She pulled out the old files, scanned every intake, every transfer, looked for patterns. There were dozens of children listed as state wards, shuffled between foster homes, shelters, and private facilities, most with scrubbed records. One name appeared again and again, marked only as C. Marsh. The initials matched, but the last name didn't, until she found it. A single intake form, half-charred from 1991. The child had arrived with no memory of her last name. She called herself Cassia. A caseworker had written, "Child insists her name is Cassia Marsh, but records show no such family in the area." At the bottom of the form, a note, "Child may be fabricating identity, memory loss due to trauma, referred to observation program." Lana circled the phrase, observation program, not therapy, not protection, experiment. The next morning, she returned to the facility, this time with backup. They scoured the lower levels, documented every room, every tape, every mirror. In a drawer sealed behind a rusted door labeled private, admin only, they found a series of photos, children with name tags, Cassia among them. Beside her, others whose faces were blurred, not by the camera, but manually scratched out, as if someone had wanted them erased. On the back of one photo, Cassia had written in shaky handwriting, "If we forget, they win. If we remember, we might still find each other." And beneath that, I'll leave the light on. Please find it. They left the facility that night with dozens of items bagged for evidence: tapes, journals, photos, marbles, scraps of children's drawings. But what Lana couldn't shake was the final thing they found. In the back of the still room, behind a crumbling wall panel, was a mural, this one half finished. It showed two girls walking hand in hand toward a door of light. Above them, a single word: unforgotten. She stared at that mural until the light dimmed in her flashlight, because she recognized the second girl. It was Kimmy, and Cassia had painted her into freedom before either of them knew it would come. As they sealed the site and returned to town, Lana looked up at the horizon. The morning light was breaking, and she whispered, just to herself, not just survivors, witnesses. The town would never understand the full weight of what had happened, but the ones who lived it, they were remembering now. Days that followed blurred in silence and soft light. Kimmy spent hours flipping through the old journals they'd recovered. Each page had the feel of something sacred, scribbled thoughts pressed between the cracks of command and obedience, notes scratched in margins between forced lessons and code words. Some of them were Cassia's. Others, she realized, were from children she couldn't remember by name, but somehow in the lines she still knew their voices. I think I used to share a room with one of them, Kimmy told Lana one afternoon. She had a scar behind her ear, said they called it her reset mark. Lana stiffened. Reset mark? Kimmy nodded. When a kid started remembering things that didn't match the story, they said she was glitching, like her memories were corrupted. Her hand trembled. After they took her for realignment, she came back quiet. She didn't speak, just stared at the mirror. Lana sat down across from her, slow and steady. Was this in the same part of the facility as Room 6? No, Kimmy swallowed. This was before Room 6. A pause. Then, barely audible, they called it the gallery. Later that night, Lana stood at the station's evidence board, tracing string between pins. Names, timelines, recovered photos, tapes, drawings, facility blueprints. A map was slowly taking shape, not just of the building, but of memory. The memory they tried to burn. She found it tucked in the bottom of the last journal, the one Cassia had scribbled notes in during her final weeks in isolation. A sketch. Faint pencil marks, smudged and worn. A circular hallway with alcoves on every side, each alcove holding what looked like a frame or a window. In the center, a round stone pedestal. Cassia had written a single word beneath the drawing: gallery. Lana didn't sleep. She cross-referenced every blueprint the state had on file. The gallery wasn't there, but the layout, it reminded her of something else. An annex. A part of the original facility that had supposedly collapsed in the 80s and was sealed off. But one faint, hand-drawn sketch from a whistleblower inspector in 1984 showed a structure still intact behind the eastern wall of the observation level. Lana drove out before dawn. The forest was silent, frost lingering on the edges of pine needles. She reached the site and re-entered through the eastern shaft. This time, her boots crunched not just over dust, but old glass, shattered and glittering. A broken nameplate lay half-buried near the base of the wall. The only legible part? Tensional Program Unit. She reached the bricked-over section and began tapping. Hollow. Behind the cement, space. It took nearly 3 hours for her to pry it open. When the last brick fell away, dust poured out like a breath held too long. And there it was, a stone corridor, curved. She stepped inside. The gallery smelled of mildew, rust, and something faintly electric, like machines left running long after their purpose was lost. The floor sloped downward, and light no longer reached from above. Her flashlight cut into the dark. Each alcove held a frame, not mirrors, not windows, screens, dozens of small, flickering CRT monitors. Most were dead, but one, at the very end, blinked on as she passed. Fuzzy static. Then a faint image, a child, standing in a room facing the wall. A nurse or doctor off-screen giving instructions. "Say your name," the voice commanded. Silence. Say your name." The child turned slowly. It was Cassia, younger, maybe 9. "My name is mine," she whispered. Then the screen went black. Lana stepped back, her breath fogging the air. Behind her, the pedestal in the center of the gallery hummed. She approached it. On top was a locked case, and beside it, a journal, sealed in plastic. Old, marked with red tape on the spine. A note on top read, "Not to be opened. Evidence, level 3. Destroy if escalation occurs." She broke the seal. Inside, pages of transcribed interviews. Children. Dozens. The sessions had been labeled memory purification interviews. Questions repeated again and again. Where were you born? Do you remember your original family? What did they call you? Over and over. In many of them, a child's answers changed after a few pages. Names faded, origins blurred, personal details vanished, until only numbers remained. Except for one. Interview subject 19, Cassia. Her answers never changed. Q. Do you remember your real name? A. Yes. Q. What is your name? A. Cassia Marsh. Q. Who gave you that name? A. My mother. Q. Do you believe she is still alive? A. I don't know, but I remember her hands and the smell of bread in the morning. The pages that followed showed repeated attempts to reset Cassia's memories, forced sleep cycles, light therapy, mirror time. All failed. Final note, subject remains non-compliant. Recommended for room 6 transfer. Status, irretrievable. Lana closed the journal slowly, hands shaking. Cassia hadn't just remembered, she'd resisted. Through every manipulation, every purge, she'd held on to her story. Back in town, the bookstore light was still on. Maya, Cassia, sat behind the counter, a cup of tea steaming in her hands. Lana laid the journal on the table in front of her. "I found your words," she said. Maya didn't move. Then, gently, she opened the cover. Page after page, she read in silence. At one point, her hand came to rest on a phrase scrawled in Cassia's own handwriting. "If my voice disappears from the world, let the silence remember me." Tears slipped down Maya's cheeks. "I thought it was gone," she whispered. "I thought they'd taken it." "You were never silent," Lana said softly. "You just hadn't been heard yet." The next day, Lana called a press meeting. She presented redacted documents, recovered evidence, testimonies from Kimmy, Nora, and, if she agreed, Maya. But that morning, Maya stood outside the bookstore and taped a sign to the door. "Closed today. I have a story to tell." The morning it all unraveled was strangely warm for early spring. Sheriff Lana sat alone in the makeshift archive room at the station. The recovered documents were spread out across the floor. Maps, transcripts, audio logs, and children's drawings. One of the reports she'd flagged days earlier kept pulling her back. It was a brief intake form from 1993, 2 pages, mostly redacted. But in the bottom margin was a scrawled note in pencil. Unit 12, transfer not completed. Child unresponsive during protocol. Witnessed deviation. Isolate immediately. Do not assign number. No name, no follow-up. Just a silent footnote in a system built on forgetting. She circled it and reached for the recorder. The tape was labeled Session Unsorted. It started with static, then a soft voice, female, shaky. This is being done under duress. I was told not to record, but someone needs to remember this if it doesn't end the way they promise." A long pause. "There was a girl. She wouldn't forget. She kept humming a song they didn't teach her. Said it reminded her of her sister. They called her non-compliant, moved her to isolation. That night, she scratched something under the bed. I found it. A number. 28. But she didn't have a number." The voice trembled. "She didn't belong here. None of them did." Then static. Lana rewound and listened again. This time, she noticed something different. barely audible in the background, a faint echo, a musical note repeating softly, a lullaby. She knew that melody. Maya had hummed it once in her sleep. She called Kimmy. When Kimmy arrived, she asked only one question. "Do you remember a girl who didn't have a number?" Kimmy looked away. "I used to think she was a ghost," she said finally. "She never spoke, but she was always there, watching, listening." Lana waited. Kimmy went on. "They said she wasn't part of the program, that she came from a failed site. But one night, she gave me something." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a thin slip of folded paper. Old, yellowed. Inside, a line written in careful block letters. "They can't erase what I never said." Below it, a hand-drawn symbol, a spiral, pierced by a single line. Maya stared at it. "I've seen this before," she whispered. "In the books, the ones I was told to burn. It was drawn in the margins, always at the end. They called it the sign of the unsilenced." Lana found it again 2 days later, deep in the archives of the facility's underground sector, an area she hadn't explored before. The key had been in a misaligned vent, something Aaron had mentioned in passing before he disappeared. Behind the wall, a narrow crawl space. Dust choked the air. Her flashlight flickered. She moved slowly, knees scraping rusted metal, the hum of underground stillness pressing in. Then, space. A circular room, small, perfectly symmetrical, no doors, no exits. And on each of the 8 stone walls, carved deep, the spiral. Each one different, tilted, broken, doubled, jagged, like someone had been practicing over and over. In the center, a chair. No restraints, just a wooden chair facing the farthest wall. And on the wall, etched by fingernail or knife, 5 words. "I remember the wrong way." The air in the room felt electric, dense, like the walls were still vibrating from a scream that hadn't yet finished. Lana took a photo and backed out. When she showed Maya and Kimmy the image, both turned pale. "That's where they took the ones who wouldn't forget," Kimmy said. "Not the disobedient ones, the ones who remembered too well. They called it the unbinding room." Lana found it again 2 days later, deep in the archives of the facility's underground sector, an area she hadn't explored before. The key had been in a misaligned vent, something Aaron had mentioned in passing before he disappeared. Behind the wall, a narrow crawl space. Dust choked the air. Her flashlight flickered. She moved slowly, knees scraping rusted metal, the hum of underground stillness pressing in. Then, space. A circular room, small, perfectly symmetrical, no doors, no exits. And on each of the 8 stone walls, carved deep, the spiral. Each one different, tilted, broken, doubled, jagged, like someone had been practicing over and over. In the center, a chair, no restraints, just a wooden chair facing the farthest wall. And on the wall, etched by fingernail or knife, 5 words. "I remember the wrong way." The air in the room felt electric, dense, like the walls were still vibrating from a scream that hadn't yet finished. Lana took a photo and backed out. When she showed Maya and Kimmy the image, both turned pale. "That's where they took the ones who wouldn't forget," Kimmy said. "Not the disobedient ones, the ones who remembered too well." They called it the unbinding room. That night, Lana found another recording. It wasn't on any tape. It was buried in an old answering machine, recovered years ago from a shuttered substation nearby. She hadn't thought to plug it in before. The message was dated April 1995, timestamp 3:14 a.m. The voice was faint, young. "If someone finds this, please know we didn't want to disappear. They said we were stories that never happened, but I can still feel my sister's hand. I can still hear the rain that night." Click. Nothing else. Maya sat quietly after Lana played it. Then, barely audible, "That was her." "Who?" Maya looked up. "The girl with no name, the one who left the spiral." She never spoke out loud, But she left stories in pieces. She called herself Sora. Lana repeated it. Sora? I think it meant sky, Maya said. Or maybe something that couldn't be held. Kimmy stood up. Then she didn't disappear. She left the rest of herself somewhere. We just have to find it. The final clue came in an old box mailed anonymously to the sheriff's station. There was no return address, just a single page, a drawing of the forest, 3 trees circled in red, a creek, and an arrow pointing beneath. Beneath what? Lana and Maya hiked out the next morning. The forest was heavy with mist. It soaked their jackets, curled around their ankles, silencing every step. They reached the trees, petrified trunks, long dead, roots twisted in knots. Underneath, a slab of stone, carved with the spiral. They lifted it together. A tunnel. No lights, no stairs, just earth descending into shadow. Lana switched on her headlamp. Maya followed close. They crawled, hands cold, silence pressing in like water. After 10 minutes, the space widened. A chamber, walls of chalky limestone, and on every wall, words, written in charcoal, ash, paint, whatever could mark. Sora was here. You can't forget what you never gave away. They tried to break our names, but they couldn't learn how we loved. And then, a final phrase in crimson, tell them we sang. In the center of the room, a wooden box. Inside, 14 name tags, handmade, paper and string, each with a name Lana didn't recognize. But now she knew. They weren't lost. They had simply hidden themselves in pieces, across time, waiting for the right eyes to see, the right voices to speak. That night, Maya added one more spiral to the notebook, a full one, complete, because now they weren't alone in the silence anymore. Spring unfolded over Morning Lake like a long, slow breath. The sky softened, the trees returned to life, but beneath the surface, under the moss and the silence, there were stories still clawing toward the light. Sheriff Lana hadn't slept much since the discovery of the spiral room, not because of fear, because of what she'd seen written on those walls. The words weren't just messages, they were memories, scratched out by small hands that once held crayons and now held nothing. Some names were familiar, some had been on the original Morning Lake 15 list, but others weren't. 14 name tags, but only 15 children had been reported missing. Maya ran her fingers along the edge of the final one, the paper crinkling like old skin. This one, she whispered. I recognize her handwriting, but she wasn't with us at Morning Lake. Lana glanced up. You're sure? Maya nodded. We used to swap notes between dormitories at one of the earlier homes, Sanctuary Ridge. That's where I first saw the spiral. Lana opened the database again. She searched Sanctuary Ridge. It had been decommissioned in 1989. Records were sparse, but one caught her eye. A transfer request for a girl. Age, 10. Name, Renata Vale. Disposition, incomplete. Incomplete. That word again. Kimmy leaned over the table, pointing at the tag. That's her. The quiet one. She wrote poems on paper towels. Where did they take her? No one answered. But the answer came 3 days later, in the form of a package delivered to the sheriff's station. No return address. Again, inside, a film reel, and a note, barely legible, water damaged. Not all of them vanished. Some were archived. Lana held the reel like it might break. She took it to the old projector in the evidence room. Maya and Kimmy stood behind her as the flickering began. Static. Then black and white footage. Children, in uniforms, faces blurred. A long hallway. Then a girl, standing completely still in front of a blackboard. A voice off screen asks, "What is your designation?" She didn't answer. The voice repeated, harsher. "What is your designation?" She turned her head slowly and said quietly, "I'm not a number. I'm a memory." Kimmy gasped. Maya took her hand. "That was Renata," Kimmy said. "She never gave in. Not once." The reel cut to black. The rest of the tape had decayed. But that moment, those 7 words were enough. That night, Lana filed for a statewide search of former special residential transfer centers, a bureaucratic term for facilities that hadn't existed on paper. She received a list, 18 locations, all closed, all sealed, all with redactive histories. But one was still standing, near Arcadia, a place Aaron had written about in his last note. Maya traced her finger across the map. "If Renata's still out there," she said softly, "that's where they buried her." Lana didn't wait. She assembled a team and left before dawn. They found the building tucked into a hillside, overgrown, concrete half swallowed by ivy. The sign had long been torn down, but the outline of letters still showed through rust. Arcadia Preparatory Program. The door was chained. They cut through. Inside, dust danced in their beams. Mold bloomed across cracked tile. But the structure was intact. And at the far end of the east corridor, behind a rusted panel, Lana found a metal drawer sealed tight. Inside, cassette tapes, dozens of them, each labeled only by date. No names, no details. She brought them back. The tech team started restoring what they could. One played, a girl's voice, soft. "Today, they made me forget my birthday. They said numbers don't matter here, only obedience. But I wrote it on my shoe with a pebble. I think that's enough." Another tape, a different voice. "They teach you to be small, to fold yourself into quiet. But sometimes I remember the sound of leaves. I think my name used to sound like the wind." And another, "We're not invisible, just misfiled." Maya sat in the listening room for hours. Her face never changed, but her fingers tapped the same pattern on her knee. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, the cadence of a lullaby. "Renata was here," she said finally. "I know it." And she was right. In the last playable tape, a girl sang softly, just a few lines, a haunting tune, one Lana had never heard. But Maya recognized it. "It's hers," she said. "She wrote it in the cracks of the window." Then a whisper. "If someone's listening, don't close the book. Leave one page open. I'm not done yet." That night, Lana couldn't sleep, so she walked down to Morning Lake. The stars shimmered on the surface. The dock creaked beneath her. She sat, held the last Polaroid, the one from room 6, the girl running. Cassia, but not just her. Maya, Kimmy, Aaron, Renata, names that had once been numbers, now part of a tapestry the world had tried to shred. Behind her, footsteps. Maya. She sat down wordlessly beside her. "You know what I wonder?" Maya said softly. "What? If Cassia really meant for us to find all of this, or if we just followed the parts of ourselves we were finally ready to believe in." Lana looked out over the water. "I think both," she said. "She left us a question, and we answered it." Later that month, a memorial was held in the town square, not for the dead, but for the forgotten. A black stone was placed at the center. No names, just a spiral, carved deep into the surface. And beneath it, the words, "We were always here. You just had to look." Maya reopened the bookstore fully. She named the back room Room 28. Kimmy began writing again, this time not just in journals. She published a short memoir, fragments of her life drawn in poems and spiral-lined prose. She titled it Whispers Left in Walls. As for Lana, she didn't stop. She filed federal inquiries, pushed for legislation, testified. The Morning Lake 15 became more than a case. It became a movement for lost children, for buried voices, for the ones who didn't make it, and the ones who had to carry them forward. And somewhere, far off, a man who once called himself Aaron stepped onto the soil of another forgotten place, a shuttered boarding school in the Northeast. He carried a box. Inside, a photo, a tape, and a name. He placed them at the foot of the door, lit a candle, then whispered, "You're not lost anymore." The wind rustled through the grass. The spiral turned once more, and far beneath the soil, in the dark heart of the quiet places, the voices finally began to rise, one by one, unbroken, unbound, unforgotten.